In any country, large or small, energy is a critical element for national development and more so the development of that economy. Joining me this afternoon to discuss Guyana's electricity sector so far for the year are the Honorable Prime Minister Samuel Hines, Mr. Winston Bassington, the Chairman of the Guyana Power and Light Company Board, Mr. Barrett Dindial, the CEO of GPL, and Mr. Horace Williams, the CEO of the Hinterland Electrification Unit. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Edward.
We all know in whatever you do, there are whenever there is success comes sometimes with some challenges, some difficulties. Maybe PM, you can give us a general overview of maybe from the beginning of this year to this point of the local electricity sector.
Well, thank you very much, Edward. I'd like to say that most of our people know about the Guyana Power and Light, but the Hinterland Electrification Unit is not quite well known. We have taken the position as government that every household, every home should have some degree of electrification, and we have identified the GPL as the main vehicle for carrying electricity to every household across the country. But GPL, it would be difficult to have GPL spread all over the country in the near term. So for the more distant areas, particularly the pockets, the villages, maybe up to about 200 villages across the hinterland, we have set up the Hinterland Electrification Unit to seek to serve those. In those areas, you know, we have had the program of 11,000 PV, photovoltaic solar home systems, and as part of the unserved area electrification program from about 2003 to about 2010 or so, we had started some electrification in the hinterland areas. I think we'd put in maybe 2,000 or more units in there, so that in the hinterland now we have maybe about 15,000 homes with PV systems, and across the hinterland too we have about 10 mini grids, isolated mini grids with maybe from 100 to 800 customers on those mini grids. In the case of the Guyana Power and Light, I guess the difficulties are quite known when people's power comes off. I do hear about it, we do see it up in the papers, but our service now is I think fairly good. I noticed that I think it was Emil Morvin in one of his recent articles talked about for the period when he was home in Guyana, the electricity didn't go off. So that was something good coming from someone. But we have had challenges in the Berbice area in particular. This year we've been having ongoing challenges. We have challenges on the west coast of Demerara, and we're working to meet those, and the chairman and the CEO would speak more to those challenges that GPL has been meeting, and also the successes that we've been having.
Mr. Brassington.
Thank you, Edward. Edward, if I could take a quick step back and look at where we've come from. In the last 5 years or so, we've seen an investment program in excess of 150 million US put into GPL. We've seen our customer base increase by over 25,000 customers. We've seen technical and commercial losses come from a high of 40% to 31%. So we've seen significant movements, but at the same time we face considerable challenges. We've seen the price of fuel move up. In 2007, our fuel bill was 70 million. Last year, 70 million US dollars for the year. Last year it was 110 million US dollars. This year it's 120 million US dollars. High fuel prices appear to be here to stay, and that's a challenge. On the losses, whilst the losses have come down from 40%, it remains stubbornly high at 31%, and it's been stagnating lately. We have considerable challenges in trying to reduce losses, which also requires a substantial level of investment. On the supply side, the PM referred to the difficulties we're having in Berbice and the West Coast. And these are being addressed, but will require continuing investments. So we've come a long way, but we have a long way more to go. And as we look towards the future with hydro, we expect the hydro project, the Amila Falls project, to come on stream at the end of 2016. And between now and then, we will continue to invest in improving the infrastructure. We need to continue to invest in the transmission systems. That project is ongoing. We have to rebuild our distribution system. We have to change out meters on a massive scale. We reckon that in the next few years we'll need to change out as much as 70,000 meters to be able to really tackle the commercial losses. So there's a massive investment program still ahead of us. But I think we're moving in the right direction. But we have to recognize that many of our customers at times feel very frustrated when they look at the blockouts, when they look at the level of losses. And but this is something that we all have to work together to improve.
Mr. Dindial, you were more or less involved in the day-to-day management of the operations. Maybe you could speak a little to the challenges from your end, and maybe follow up with that. Let's look at maybe some of the programs. You mentioned briefly, Mr. Bassington, these programs are happening, they're ongoing and so forth. Maybe we can spend some more time to get into more as to what these program entails.
Right, so I think we've had a fairly good year, particularly in Demerara, with supply. The supply has, I think the stability has improved significantly. The fact is, though, we are not out of the woods, like the chairman says. There are some very large projects which are being implemented now, which are expected to bring significant relief to some particular bad hit areas. And we did mention the West Demerara, the West Coast in particular. As you know, we're talking about a 26 megawatt plant now to be constructed at Breeding Hope. You know that we are working on new substations at Edinburgh and, of course, at Breeding Hope. The transmission link between East and West Demerara is going to be established. In fact, the cable is already in place. We're hoping that in the coming weeks, we will see the completion of these facilities, and we'll be able to establish this transmission link for the first time with the West Demerara. And that in itself would allow us now to deliver bulk power from East to West Demerara, and enable us to deploy additional feeders, particularly in Central West Coast at Edinburgh, which would, I think, comprehensively address the issue of frequent outages, nuisance trips, and all those issues going to be addressed. So West Coast in itself, before the end of the year, would see a dramatic improvement in supply. The 26 megawatt plant is strategically located at Breeding Hope because it is intended that in the future, at strategic nodes in the national grid, that we'll have available generation capacity. So perhaps if there is a network fault within our transmission system, that we are still able to start up these plants and to deliver power locally. In East Demerara, we're injecting new substations where we have had significant and continue to have significant growth, particularly in housing, and of course that's driving a demand for electricity. Diamond, there's a substation right next to Diamond at Golden Grove. On the East Coast, we are constructing 2 new substations at Good Hope and another at Columbia. And of course, we are linking the Demerara and Berbice systems. I was in Berbice yesterday, and I took the opportunity to speak to the Upper Quarantine Chamber of Commerce to explain to them what's going on. Chairman says we've been having some difficult times in Berbice. Currently, we have a failed 69 kV transformer at Canefield. In fact, that encountered a problem in July this year. We had a specialist engineer in the country then, and he did a detailed inspection over an entire week, and he advised that we probably change the oil. We did that, and of course, on detailed checks after that was done, revealed that the transformer, in fact, has a problem, which cannot be fixed locally. We are working with the Chinese to actually relocate one of the transformers, which was intended for Golden Grove, to try and alleviate that problem. We have overall enough generation capacity in Berbice, but with Canefield separated from the Berbice system, we're not able to share that excess capacity at Canefield with the rest of the Berbice system. So Upper Quarantine is currently linked to West Berbice, and they depend on Gaisuk, Skelton, and of course whatever capacity we have at Envoy. So we're hoping, in fact, before the end of November, that this new transformer will be in place and the Berbice situation will be rectified. In fact, by today, we're hoping that the outages that were being experienced in West Berbice and, of course, Upper Quarantine will be reduced, because we're expecting at least one of our 2 megawatt sets back at Envoy. Today, we're expecting back one of the turbines at least at Skelton back in service, which would enable Gaisuku to deliver more power to the national grid. In Berbice, I'd said that with the link between Demerara and Berbice, which we're hoping will be established next year, that the fickleness of the Berbice grid would be addressed, the instability would be addressed, the issues with voltage regulation would be addressed. And so there should be a dramatic improvement in the reliability and quality of supply available to Berbicians next year.
I was going to say, for my benefit too, and for the our audience, I guess you could let us know what it is in time and money, say, to get one of these transformers. I think it's a 4 or 5 megawatt transformers, and I know some people ask, well, why doesn't GPL keep these transformers spare and so on?
Well, the transformer is a 17 MVA transformer. Previously, it was the largest transformer available in the GPL system. Recently, we bought 17. Recently, we bought 2 35 MVA transformers, but the 17 MVA transformer at today's price would be about $400,000 US, a little over 80 million Guyana dollars, and it would typically take about 6 months for one of that to be manufactured and delivered to us here.
So you have to, those you have to order,
right,
waiting them to be manufactured,
right,
before they're delivered.
There's a reason why we have 9 of these transformers which were bought and installed in the 70s, so they're all about 40 years old. And the reason why you don't put a transformer like this in stock is that typically 69 kV transformers cannot be kept on the shelf. If you're keeping one as a spare, you have to energize it. You have to put power in it. Or else there's no other way of maintaining it and having it ready for service when you need it.
But listening to all these plans and these programs coming on stream, there's always the investment. Yes. We cannot run away from that fact that projects or to ensure that these systems are up and running, they call for a great deal of investment.
Yes, that is certainly so, and it's one of the constraints on the kind of things that GPL would like to do. Say in the case of generation, I can give an example where it's published in the Caribbean Electricity Company's journal that in Suriname they're planning to put up a 200 megawatt diesel generating station, but in it they will have 15, 20 megawatt units. So they'll be having 300 megawatt installed to supply 200 megawatt. Now that kind of backup is required in the books. You need those sort of backups for regular maintenance and emergency maintenance. But we in GPL, we couldn't we didn't have that kind of luxury to have that kind of backup there, fallback on generation. And I guess similarly you have fallbacks on the transmission and distribution systems and the way you lay it out. So we know that we have been running very tight in terms of the capacities and so on that we have, but we're doing the best that we can with what the Guyanese people can afford at this time.
Um, I know we all could recognize that some of the challenges that we're facing in the electricity sector is directly linked to growth.
Yes,
I talk growth
that
in
is,
terms of
you make a good point there in that the problems we have in catching up. When I came into government, we were looking at 70,000, I think, customers in 1992, and we were looking at plans even then that talked about three substations, and now we'll have a program putting in 7 substations and expanding 3 others, I think, at the power stations themselves. So, and even on the West Coast, the problem on the West Coast is a problem of the growth that has taken place, so that the feeder is now overloaded, and that is why GPL people came up with trying to put in a makeshift generator station at Lenora so as to offload the feeder along the West Coast. So we've been doing things that are maybe not standard so as to get by the best way we could.
we spoke about the cost that is attached to this, but I know there's another you may want to call it a cost that GPL has to bear somewhere along the line, and it has to do with the in terms of the high loss reduction. Sorry, your loss reduction because of the high the amount of energy you're losing because of so many reasons.
Well, the losses are certainly something that is quite costly to us. Say, for example, at the moment with 30% losses, it means that when we generate, say, 10 megawatts, or 10 kilowatt hours or whatever, when 10 kilowatt hours is only 7 kilowatt hours reach customers, customers are billed for. So 3 kilowatt hours are lost in the technically or commercially or some other ways, poor meters not reading correctly or something. But in the way a business runs, we would need to have the money for the total generation, for the generation of 10. So right away you see that the prices go up maybe 40%. The cost of delivering at a customer goes up maybe 40% above the generation cost because of the losses. And let me say that even in a good system, there is not zero loss. There must be some technical losses because there must be voltage differentials or so, I think, power to flow. So there is going to be some amount of technical losses. And I guess even in the best systems, there is going to be some small amount of commercial losses. I don't know what's the best systems in the world, what's the lowest sums that they find in the world, 5%, 6%? 3% is maybe the best figure. But I think we're targeting, for our kind of situation, we're targeting...
overall about 9%.
We're targeting overall about 9%. So you may say that we should be down from 30 towards 9%. Is where we want to get. So that's a big problem that we have. But let me say that this problem is historical and cultural. And let me say that the question of losses exists in all sectors and all areas, all parts of Guyana, all types of Guyana. We have seen instances of losses. So all are, 1 out of every 4. If we follow the numbers, maybe 1 out of every 4 persons we know, not we ourselves, but 1 out of every 4 persons we know, is probably one way or the other way, not paying for the electricity that they're receiving. That's what the analysis seemed to suggest. Uh, so that's a serious problem, and I would like to encourage people not to yield to the view that some say that if I have to pay more because somebody else is stealing electricity, then it opens the door for me to steal electricity. That just becomes self-fulfilling, and it just progresses all the time. So I'd like to speak against that. Um, and I'd like to say that we've been putting quite a bit of effort into reducing losses. You may recall too, we lost one of our chief officers maybe 2 years ago now, that was on the job going after electricity being stolen. So that's a serious business, and I think it's a bad mark on our nation. It's a bad mark on our nation.
I think I could talk about the approach to dealing with losses now because we've had the benefit of some, South American experts who are here, compliments of the Inter-American Development Bank. And they're saying that the experience is that despite which country you're dealing with, that pleading with people just doesn't help. Relying on the police to enforce the law just doesn't solve the problem. That you have to take a technological approach. Of course, there's a serious cost attached to taking a technological approach. But we have no choice but to pursue that right now. And in fact, in moving forward, GPL is going to have a strong technological element in trying to deal with this problem. So we go in there, we're redesigning our networks, we're putting in state-of-the-art meters, we're putting in very sophisticated systems that would allow us to manage a lot of what we're doing out there from offices. So we don't need to send crews out there to raid people. Obviously, when they go into the field, they're exposed to dangers. There is the issue of corruption, You're basically back to square one in short order. So you have to take this strong technological approach. And of course, we're looking at the systems that's out there, and we jokingly say that they really need to know Guyanese before they design those systems. And a lot of them, while they're very advanced technologically, they still have some weaknesses. And we know the extent to which people go locally to steal electricity and to get free service. And so to complement the technology, there are other things that we're doing which I, won't want to reveal.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but just to put the costs again, that whilst maybe it would have cost $50,000 to extend electrification to a household by the way we've been doing, this more robust technological solution in, I think, cord cables, special cables and so on, could lift it to about $200,000. And if you think of 10, 20, 40,000 households and you multiply that differential, you start to see some pretty large sums of money. But we think that that's the way we would have to head. Yes.
Mr. President.
The issue of reducing losses and investment is a very important topic. In fact, just this week, our board has been looking at the issue. We are looking at trying to bring the losses from 31% to maybe 17, 18% by 2016. The losses are broken down into technical losses, which is a little over 14%. And in fact, over the last few years, technical losses have risen because of the increased load on the system. So whilst commercial losses have come down, technical losses have gone up. So technical losses are by 14%, commercial losses is the remainder. We're investing 40 million US dollars, excuse me, in this new transmission project and upgrade of 2 substations and 7 new substations. That project is scheduled for completion towards the latter part of next year. But the reduction of technical losses from that is only going to be maybe 1 to 2%. In order to really move on technical losses, we've got to do a lot more things. Change our transformers, completely rebuild our distribution system. And we're talking of massive dollars here, 20, 30 million US dollars. So that's on the technical. So in going forward, we also have to source that money to do that. On the commercial, we have three major areas of losses. You have the billing system, but we just put in a new billing system 2 years ago. That's working fine. You've got basically defective meters. We're looking at accelerating our meter replacement program. Instead of doing it over a 5 to 10 year period, maybe trying to get it done over a 2 year period, replace as many as 70,000 meters. But just there, that alone will take maybe 10 to 15 million, and depending on how we look at it. And that requires financial resources. And then you've got meter theft, theft of electricity. In the last 5 years, we've seen about 40,000 illegal connections removed. Probably a little over 1,500 of those persons were arrested, and about 800 brought before the courts. But when they're fined, it's just a slap in the wrist. So our ability to basically prosecute the people who are caught stealing electricity, I don't think it's a strong enough deterrent for stealing electricity. So it's a major challenge. So we are hopeful that with a meter replacement program on the scale of 70,000, our commercial losses can come down about 8%. With continued investments in the transmission and with the other work on the technical side, technical losses will come down. But without massive investment on the technical side, technical losses is going to come down very slowly for the dollars invested. On the commercial, there's room to get more done, but that also requires monies. And as you know, this year alone, we're getting $6 billion from the Treasury for an operating subsidy because of fuel prices. And then we're getting another $5 billion for the 26 megawatt Wärtsilä plant. So the government is putting a lot of money into GPL to improve our efficiencies and our capacity. But the amount of money that you really need to put in to take us to a state-of-the-art efficient utility is quite substantial. And we have been deferring a lot of that. Because of limited resources. And some of our efficiencies suffer because of that. But we're moving in the right direction.
I was thinking that we have my good friend there, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, I was coming to Mr. Williams on the
Hinterland.
the hinterland. But I wanted us to touch quickly on because I know this is the big question.
Yes.
We're in November.
Yes. What about Christmas?
The Christmas season.
Yes.
That's
I
the
think
big question
Mr. Dindial, I think, knows that best. He has been saying to the chairman and I myself here about the plans, and I'm satisfied that good plans are being put into place, but maybe Mr. Dindial can lead in that.
All right. So in Demerara, we are actually in the final stages of the generation maintenance, the Wärtsilä sets. Actually, there's one 7 megawatt set that's done right now. We're hoping that in a week's time this will be back in service. When this is completed, there's another one at Kingston also that has to be overhauled. So by the end of November, we should finish our generation maintenance in Demerara, and we should be back up to about 92 megawatts. For Christmas, we're forecasting a peak of about 85. We don't have much of a margin, but we do have a little margin. To date, we have seen a peak of 84.3 megawatts. Already. So typically, either Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, we get hit with the peak for the year. And we're thinking about 85 megawatts. In Barbies, having a discussion with Gaisuka yesterday, they confirmed that their 5 megawatt Wärtsilä set, they're expecting the alternator to be here by the 9th of December. And they're thinking by the 20th of December that they should have that set back up. If that set comes back on the 20th as they plan, we should have an overall available capacity in Barbies of about 28 megawatts for a 19-20 megawatt peak. In Essequibo, we are doing well. We've completed our maintenance program at all locations. And in Regina, we have 4 megawatts of Wärtsilä, and we have a Caterpillar set there, 1.4 megawatt. Wakana, we have 2 Caterpillar sets. Leg 1, we have completed finally the overhaul of that set, so that's running fine. Bartica, there's a minor issue in the last set, but we're through major maintenance on all three Caterpillar sets at Bartica. So we're pretty well up. The only problem that we need to look at, obviously, is that the new substations, only the West Demerara are we expecting those substations to be in service. Of course, Edinburgh and Breeding Hope. But on the East Coast and the East Bank, we don't expect those to be in service. And of course, the feeders are pretty heavily loaded. In particular, those consumers between Collagen and Mahaika, that circuit is extremely heavily loaded.
I was going to say that going back to the numbers Barrett said just now, with a peak demand, we're looking at how much, 87 megawatts or so?
85.
85 megawatts.
For
And
Demerara.
normally for Demerara, normally with good practice, you should works out, you should have about 40% of that in your total backup system. But we have about 30 megawatts. We will be running with about 7 megawatts as a backup. So, and if we go over 85, it means every unit has to be online. If any one unit comes out, it's cut out, and then 2 units, a second unit, it's even more. And you normally think of 5 units running and 2 more units, one is spare, one is standby for emergency, and one on regular maintenance. So we basically have been running with very little backup, very close. That's one thing.
Mr. Williams, the hinterland electrification program. Maybe you can spend a little time, maybe to tell us a little about it, because a lot of people don't know much about it. Maybe.
Yes, Edward. As Prime Minister mentioned earlier, based on the government policy or program to extend some level of electricity to every household within Guyana, we've been looking to the hinterland in particular, to those communities that up to a few years ago had little or no access to electricity. That has changed since, as Prime Minister mentioned, the government's unsolved areas electrification program that started around 2003. Many of the communities are now receiving some form of electricity that's based mainly on solar systems, individual solar home systems, or from a mini grid system. Now, for this year alone, we have installed more than 10,000 solar home systems in over 180 hinterland communities. We estimate that there are over 200 hinterland communities. By the end of this year, we would meet a total of 11,000 solar home systems. And in the near future, we're looking to install maybe another 3,000 to 4,000. Apart from the solar home systems, the bigger villages, the villages that are a bit more developed, we've put in mini grids. Those communities include Madia, Port Kaituma. And, well, as Prime Minister mentioned, and Letem, etc., the number of consumers now range from maybe somewhere around 100 right up to about 800 households. In those communities, we're still looking to upgrade in some cases and to expand to capture more persons, more households and businesses, bring them onto the grid, providing reliable electricity service.
If I speak a bit about our program in the solar home systems, we are dealing primarily with the village captain and council. So we supply to a typical village enough units to be installed on every one of the houses that as was listed maybe 4 or 5 years ago when the lists were made. I could say now that we're doing it, we see that as in all places across Guyana, you're having 5 and 10% more homes now. So that creates a little bit of an issue right away. But essentially, we are entering into a contract with the captain and council of the villages that in a way that they would select and choose, they're free to choose, but there should be a contribution of about $500 per month per household. And this will be kept at the village level. It could either be kept in an account and the money is assigned to each household, or it could be kept in a general account for the village as a whole. They're free to do it, but this is not paying for electricity or so. This is actually having a sum of money there so that when the lamps go, that there's money for people to prepare the lamps for, because in many of the villages we still don't have a full cash economy. Many people are still in a more or less self-subsistence situation, planting to eat themselves, and some excess may be sold from time to time, and so on. In the villages, we have, in each village, we have trained 2 persons who were identified in the installation and for the repairs. And I need to make the point that in the program, the government has provided for $3,000 for each installation in the village. So these 2 persons, if there are 60 people in the village, 60 homes, they will get paid by the government. Each household installed, they will get $3,000 each. We've been finding that in a number of villages, the people we trained, maybe within 3 months, 6 months, though they've gone. So we have to keep on doing some training, and maybe we're finding that we have to be a little bit, and we could be a bit broader in selecting people. So maybe you may end up selecting more women, and maybe older women, even 40 years old women, for training, because you're looking to find a group that might stay in the village, or even retired persons or so. And you have the freedom. You don't have to be curtailed by which things are good, passes at CXC and so on. You have much more freedom in selecting people and training people. So this is the arrangement at the villages for the solar home systems. But we are planning, because of reports from other places, even including our neighboring Suriname and other places, you find that when the solar home system goes in, everyone is excited about it. It brings lights. And one of my colleague ministers was saying he happened to be on the Pomeroon in the evening, and it was so exhilarating to see the houses with the lights as you went along the river. But after a while, this may go, and then as bulbs blow or problems develop, if you don't have someone to fix it and make sure it's being fixed, these systems tend to deteriorate over years. Yes, they deteriorate and they fall out of use. So we have a mandate for the hinterland electrification unit to visit at least twice a year and have somebody visit and see each unit and confirm that each unit is in place and is being utilized. So we're looking to have that mandate to ensure that it is maintained. In the case of the mini grids, again, we've been conscious that in these areas where we're going, a number of people may not be, again, in a cash economy. And so there are various ways of supporting the people with less income. In the GPL system, there is a system of giving a reduction for the first 75 kilowatt hours a month. You could also take a system where you give a small amount at no charge. So our position is we give the first 15 kilowatt hours, which is just enough, which is enough to give lighting. We give it at no charge. If you take 30 kilowatt hours, you pay full price for everything else above, and full price we're looking at about $100 a kilowatt hour in the hinterland at the moment. It could be more. Some of the price calculations say it might be $131 or $40 a kilowatt hour, but we're going in and charging $100 a kilowatt hour as a full price figure. So if you take 30 kilowatt hours, you only pay $50 a kilowatt hour because the first 15 is free. So you get a 50%, basically a 50% reduction. So we're looking to develop that and try to bring everyone in the hinterland in particular into the system. In terms of quantity of electricity, the 65 watt system in our situation here probably averages about 10 kilowatt hours a month, so that a person with a 65 watt solar home system gets about 10 kilowatt hours of power a month, and he's getting it as a grant. And at the moment, it's probably costing us about $50,000 per unit landed in Georgetown and installed in the villages and the homes. It's averaging maybe in $75,000 to $80,000 installed.
So, listening to all of this, you could see the high cost that is involved in not only GPL itself in terms of operations and so forth, but even to some extent the hinterland electrification program. Maybe, Mr. Brassington, we could talk a little bit because we are quickly running out of time. Maybe we could spend a few minutes on hydro. How this is going to fit into the program and assist in some sort of way.
Okay. Well, as you would have noted recently, the engineering, procurement, construction contract, the EPC contract, was signed between Site Global and China Rail. And we're looking at financial close and start of construction of the hydro in the middle of next year. The construction period will be about 40 months. So by the latter part of 2016, the hydro will come in line. The installed capacity of the hydro is 165 megawatts. And we expect to be able to receive, in terms of energy on an annual basis, a little over 1,000 gigawatt hours. Now, currently GPL total generation is about 650 gigawatt hours. When the hydro comes online, we expect to have GPL supplied by the hydro. We expect to have Linden supplied by the hydro. Linden is about 70 gigawatt hours per annum. And we expect a significant chunk of the self-generators to come onto the grid. And we estimate that they will use about 130 gigawatt hours per year. Plus we have growth between now and then. So by the time the hydro comes online in 2016, when you put on that switch, we expect very shortly after that you will have a demand of about 900 gigawatt hours. So the hydro will actually reach full utilization very quickly. Now the hydro price we expect will be significantly lower than what it costs us to generate. Currently our generation costs using the heavy fuel oil, which is the cheaper type of fuel as opposed to diesel. The generation cost is in the vicinity of 20 US cents per kilowatt hour. Based on the amount we expect to pay for the hydro, the annual capacity payment, we expect to pay a little under 110 million US a year, and we will basically get 1,000 gigawatt hours or more. So it's about 10 to 11 US cents a kilowatt hour versus 20 US cents. So the hydro will actually allow us to save, based on current fuel prices, about 90 million US a year, roughly speaking. So the hydro is an important means to bringing our cost of generation down and having a buffer or a stable set of prices as opposed to the current fuel generation and the volatility of fuel.
Okay.
Yes, and one of the things we might expect or be concerned about as climate change becomes more and more accepted as a big issue. I think that eventually fuels, all fossil fuels, will have to carry the price of taking the CO2 release back out of the air. And looking at current technologies and costs, that looks like even a further doubling of present fossil fuel prices to take the CO2 that is normally released when we run a car. We're putting CO2 in the air, but at some time payments may have to be made to take that CO2. There's some special terms. Take it back out of the air and fix it back. And looking at Hurricane Sandy recently, I think the pressures would be developing for on climate change side. So hydro protects us against steady rises in fossil fuel prices, diesel and HFO, and it also protects us against some time when fossil fuels may have to carry a tax or a cost for putting CO2 in the air.
So as we anticipate the price for the fossil fuel to go up, we are looking at in a direction where we are going down.
Or we're
in
holding
terms
it
of,
steady. Well, once we
oh,
get in now at 10, 11 cents a kilowatt hour, 12 cents, wherever it ends up, once we get in there, that price should be pretty stable for 20 years. And I think after 20 years and the payments are paid off is made, it's probably then only running costs or something like that.
Yeah, it's
So
less than
that
2 cents, maybe 1
might
cent.
might be 2 cents a kilowatt hour. So that would put us good for the future.
Okay, gentlemen, I want to thank you very much, the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Winston Bassington, the Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Guyana Power and Light, Mr. Barry Dindial, the Chief Executive Officer, and Mr. Horace Williams, the CEO of the Hinterland Electrification Program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank you very much.